Hey, what's up? Welcome back to the Anti-Study Club. This is David from Core Language. Happy to see you again. Hey, are you guys science fiction fans? Do you like science fiction movies? Um, do you like fantasy movies? I love them. I am a big fan of science fiction. And if you're familiar with some of these sci-fi movies, you can make that short, science fiction, sci-fi. If you like these sci-fi movies, you might be familiar with the work of the artist we're going to talk about today. We're still talking about comics, and this is a famous comic artist from France. His name was Jean Giraud, also known as Moebius. Here are some really wonderful illustrations, drawings by Moebius. And his work had a very big influence on other artists, especially filmmakers. If you influence someone, then you affect their behavior, you affect what they do. So his work had a very, very big influence on many filmmakers. You see an influence of Moebius in movies like Blade Runner by Ridley Scott. Also, the movie Aliens by Ridley Scott. When I look at James Cameron's work like Avatar, I see the influence of Moebius. So Moebius was a comic book artist. He made comics, but his work influenced many, many science fiction movies that we see today. Moebius also worked, like I said, as a comic book artist. So he worked with Marvel and he'd made comics for many years. He died in 2012, so sadly he is no longer with us. But his work continues to influence artists and filmmakers. Okay, so let's take a look at one of these comics by Jean Giraud or Moebius. We're going to look at part of a comic that he made in 1988. Okay, so this is Fildegar, everybody. I introduce you to this character, Fildegar. That's a strange name. I don't know anyone named Fildegar, but this is the name of the character. And Fildegar lives on this spacecraft or spaceship, this tubular shaped spaceship shaped like a tube. So this is a tubular spacecraft or spaceship. And he's traveling through space. For a long time, he's been traveling between galaxies, and he's alone on this spacecraft. So he spends a lot of time with the flowers that are growing on the spacecraft. If you grow flowers indoor, you might need a hydroponic garden. So this is a hydroponic garden. He is spending time with his hydroponic flowers on the spacecraft. Fildegar also is something of an artist. He likes to paint. So he spends time painting murals on the wall. If you paint on a wall, something big, we call it a mural. So he's painting a mural on the wall of the spaceship. He also spends time sitting and gazing at this very large crystal. And he is looking at this large crystal. This crystal controls the ship. It guides the ship. How? I don't know. But in this story, the crystal is controlling the ship, and Fildegar spends a lot of time sitting and watching, looking at it. If you look for a long time, you are gazing at something. So he's gazing at this crystal. very rarely, he might look at some old photographs and organize the photographs. You can see him saying, all these images from a time that is gone, a time that is past. He's looking at the photographs. Here's a photograph of a house, and you can see above the house, there's another spacecraft. Looks like a UFO, right? But these are photographs from his life. And you know, sometimes you look at photographs and the memories make you feel a little emotional, right? You feel maybe like you're missing people, or you're missing a place, or you're missing a time. So he does this rarely because looking at the photographs makes him feel kind of emotional. And sometimes he is just simply bored. Nothing much to do. He's alone on this spacecraft. So sometimes Fildegar is just very, very bored on the spacecraft. One day, the crystal guides the spaceship to a very interesting planet. This planet has life. And you can see this planet is surrounded by all of these rings. You know, the planet Saturn has a very large ring around it. This planet has many rings around it. So the spaceship is being guided to this planet. On this planet, there are inhabitants, beings or species that live on that planet. So if you inhabit a planet, you live on that planet. So these are the inhabitants of the planet, and they love to sit and gaze at the beauty of the sky, the beauty of the rings that surround the planet. They never get tired of looking at these beautiful skies on their planet. Here are two of the inhabitants. We'll meet them in a little bit. The one says, "Look there." The other one says, "Oh, lovely, lovely." So these inhabitants are looking at the sky and saying, "Wow, spectacular, so lovely." Fildegar is going to visit this planet. So he gets into his capsule. The capsule is like a smaller ship. And it's going to leave the spacecraft and go visit the planet. Fildegar is in his capsule, ready to investigate, to check out, to explore the planet that is below him. So you see his capsule detaching from the spacecraft, and it is going to now descend to the planet, go down to descend. We see another spacecraft. Well, we see a part of another spacecraft. This orange structure is the wreckage of another spacecraft. This is, maybe it was a space station, but this was destroyed during a war that happened on this planet a long time ago. So you can see in this picture Fildegar's spacecraft, his capsule, which is leaving the spacecraft. Below that is the wreckage of another kind of spacecraft. And then below that is the planet that he is going to visit. It feels strange for Fildegar to fly past this wreckage, this old spacecraft that has been damaged. Here's a painting that Moebius did. The other ones are drawings. This is more of a painting. So you can see more detail. Here's Fildegar in his capsule flying past the wreckage of the spacecraft. On the planet, the two inhabitants are walking through the countryside, and the inhabitants of this planet are very philosophical. What does philosophical mean? Philosophical means they like to talk about philosophy. Philosophy is talking about the meaning of life, talking about how should we live, these big questions. So these are philosophical kind of people. They like to talk about what does life mean? You know, how should we live? These kind of big questions. So they're walking through the countryside and talking about philosophy. And we can see Fildegar's capsule approaching the planet in the sky. Fildegar introduces himself to these inhabitants. You see him saying, "I am Fildegar." The other being, the other species, is saying, "My name is Churn." These are different species. They're not the same, right? We're human, but we're different species than a horse or a bear or a tiger, right? We're different species. These are different species. Fildegar introduces himself, and the other one says, "My name is Churn." Churn is a strange name. I don't know anyone named Churn, but they both have strange names. However, they both speak the same language. They have a common language that they can both speak. So they use that language to talk to each other and to introduce themselves. Fildegar introduces himself, Churn introduces himself, and then the other inhabitant introduces himself. He says, "I am Joshua." Again, a strange name. I don't know anyone named Joshua. I do know people named Josh, but not Joshua. The three of them together sit and gaze at the magnificent evening sky of this planet. And that's where the story starts. So this is just introducing this character of Fildegar, and he's landed on this planet. We're going to end it there. We're not going to, there's more to this. It gets strange. Some strange things happen on this planet. He meets a giant mushroom that can talk. Some strange things happen. If you want, we can continue. It's up to you. Do you want to review some of these things that happen in the story? Let's review it. Let's do a quick review. Okay, so we meet Fildegar. Fildegar lives on a spacecraft or a spaceship. This tubular, shaped like a tube, this tubular spacecraft. And he's traveling a long time, so he has a lot of time on this spacecraft alone. Here, he's spending time with his flowers in a hydroponic garden. He likes to spend time with the flowers. He also likes to paint murals on the wall of the spacecraft. Often, he spends time gazing at this very large crystal, the crystal that controls or guides the spacecraft. Seldom he will look at some photographs, very rarely, not often. He will look at some photographs and he's thinking to himself, "Oh, these images like a picture, right? All these pictures from a time that's gone." And sometimes when we look at these old pictures, we feel a little sad, maybe a little emotional. So looking at these old memories makes him feel a little emotional. So that's why he doesn't do this often. Here we have a picture of a house and another spacecraft. It looks like there's pictures of some people, so he's probably missing these people and these places. So he doesn't do that often. And sometimes he is just simply bored. Nothing much to do. He's alone on this spacecraft. One day, the crystal directs the ship, guides the ship to a planet. This planet has life. It has inhabitants that live on the planet. Here are two of the inhabitants that live on this planet. They're a different species than Fildegar, but these inhabitants like to gaze at the magnificent rings that surround the planet. The one saying, "Look there." The other one saying, "Oh, lovely." They like to enjoy looking at the evening sky. Fildegar gets in his capsule to leave the spaceship and visit the planet. His capsule detaches from the spacecraft and starts to descend, starts to go down toward the planet. And on his way, he passes by the wreckage of this other spacecraft. He feels strange going past the wreckage of this old spacecraft, this wreckage that was destroyed during one of the wars that happened. We can see the two inhabitants walking through the countryside, and they're talking. They're talking about deep things. They're talking about the meaning of life. They're talking about philosophy. So they are walking and discussing or talking about philosophy. And we can see Fildegar's capsule descending, coming down to the planet. Fildegar introduces himself. "I am Fildegar." The other species, the other being that's on the planet, introduces himself and says, "My name is Churn." They share a common language. They both can speak the same language. The other says, "I am Joshua." And now the three of them together sit and gaze at the magnificent, amazing, wonderful sky above them. They're looking at these rings on this beautiful planet. Okay, and that's where I'm going to end it today. That's Jean Giraud, or Moebius, and that's one of his stories that he did in 1988. This artist is one of my personal favorite. I love this artist. I think his work is skillful and it's beautiful, and he has such an imagination. You know, he just imagines these different worlds, and I've always found his work to be very, very interesting. And this artist continues to have a very big influence on many filmmakers today, especially in science fiction and fantasy. When I look at James Cameron and Ridley Scott and Miyazaki, I see the influence of Jean Giraud, or Moebius. I see the influence of his work. All right, well, I hope you liked that one. I hope you enjoyed looking at these beautiful Moebius drawings. I think he's one of the most amazing artists in my life, in my lifetime, and I hope you enjoy it too. This is David from Core Language. Thanks again for watching. I'll see you next time. Have a great week.